Chapter 20, you'll find out whose daughter Sarah was. Verse 12. I guess, down through the years I'd forgotten. I know when they went into Egypt, Abram told them that Sarah was his sister. Well, he didn't tell a lie. She was a half-sister because Abram's mom was Sarah's mom, but they did not have the same father. If you look at chapter 20, verse 12.
This says she was his father.
And moreover, she is indeed my sister, the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother. Okay, I had it backwards. But so she was his half sister. So he told the truth, but he also told a little fib there at the very start. So, whose wife was she?
Whose wife was who?
Sarah. Abram, yeah. If you go to chapter 11, verse 29, it's talking, you start in 27 and go down through the generations of Terah. And Terah begat Abram and Nahor and Haran. And when he took his kids and their wives, and it lists the wives. And verse 29, and let's see here, if I can find it. The father, in verse 30, and Sarah was barren and she had no child, and Terah took Abram his son, and Lot the son of Nahor his son's son, and Sarah his daughter-in-law, whose son Abram's wife. And they went forth with him from Ur of the Chaldees to go into the land of Canaan. And they came unto Haran and dwelt there. So Sarah was Abram's wife. And as we also looked, in chapter 20, verse 12, she was also his half-sister. So it's kind of a jumbled up mess back then. And why would that be? Because if you look back up there in 27 and down through there, you'll see, let's see, who was it? Nahor, I think. Yeah, Nahor, his wife was Milcah, the daughter of Haran, who was the father of Milcah. So Nahor took his niece as a wife. So why were the lines kind of messed up like that?
One thing, there wasn't a lot of population back in that day.
Yeah.
Adam and Eve, and everybody came from them, so it started.
Yep. Yeah. Very slim pickings to choose from, in those early days.
God did not want them intermarrying with the people around them either.
Right. Yep. So what do you say when people today say, "Oh, she's my third cousin, so it's all right if I marry her or him"?
All cousins.
Do I?
It's about all cousins.
Yeah. But we have more people nowadays than what was back then. What of her appearance, Sarah? How'd she look?
she was beautiful.
Beautiful woman. Yeah, look over chapter 12, verse 11 and verse 14. And it came to pass when he was come near to enter into Egypt, that he said unto Sarai, his wife, Behold, now I know that thou art a fair woman to look upon. And then verse 14. And it came to pass that when Abram was come unto Egypt, the Egyptians beheld the woman that she was very fair. So, very good looking. And Abram, as you read the story, was afraid of what might happen. Because he was afraid that they would take her and kill him. And so he figured it'd be better off if he just told them that she was his sister. And so that way not cause him any grief. But because of that, what near tragedy did this cause? Because of the story that he told.
The king wanted her.
Okay.
Her friends with her.
Yeah. Pharaoh took her for a wife. Because, if you look over, read chapter 12, verses 11 through 15. And we've already read 11 down through there, so let's look at 15. And the prince of Pharaoh saw her and praised her to Pharaoh, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. So they believed what Abram told them. Turn over to chapter 20. Verses 1 and 2. And Abraham journeyed from thence toward the land of the south, and dwelt between Kadesh and Shur, and he sojourned in Gerar. And Abram said of Sarah, his wife, She is my sister. And Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. So, that's twice now.
Abraham's a slow learner.
Yeah, he was. That's twice, though, he's told that story, that she was his sister. And the king and then the Pharaoh both took her as a wife because of the lie that he told. What affliction did she have?
She was barren.
She was barren. Back over chapter 11, verse 30, we read that. And Sarai was barren. She had no child. So that was a problem for them back then, because the wife was supposed to bring forth offspring, but Sarah couldn't. So how did she try to solve that problem? How did she try to solve the problem of being barren, not having any children? Okay. Turn to Genesis 16, 1 through 3. And Sarai, Abram's wife, bare him no children. And she had a handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said unto Abram, Behold now, Jehovah hath restrained me from bearing. Go in, I pray thee, unto my handmaiden. It may be that I shall obtain children by her. And Abram hearkened to the voice of Sarai. And Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar the Egyptian, her handmaiden, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to Abram, her husband, to be his wife. So she was going to take care of that little problem of being barren, not being able to bear children, and let Hagar do it for her. So because she figured, well, if Abram gets her pregnant and she bears a child, then I can raise it. It'll be mine. But we're going to see a little bit different story come about. How did this work out? We should know that story, but we're going to look at it. How did it work out? Like I said last week, this is a participation class.
A series of problems.
Do what?
It became a series of problems.
It became a series of problems. We're going to see what those problems were here. But yeah, I need feedback, you know. Like I said, I don't want a lecture. I want answers coming back. So let's look at Genesis 16, 4 through 16. That's a long reading, but you pretty much have to read the whole story to understand what went on. And he went into Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. And Sarai said unto Abram, My wrong be upon thee. I gave my husband, my handmaid, unto thy bosom. But when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. Jehovah judge between me and thee. But Abram said unto Sarai, Behold, thy maid is in thy hand. Do to her that which is good in thine eyes. And Sarai dealt hardly with her, and she fled from her face. And the angel of Jehovah found her by a fountain of water in the wilderness, by the fountain in the way to Shur. And he said, Hagar, Sarah's handmaid, whence comest thou, and whence goest thou? And she said, I am fleeing from the face of my mistress Sarai. And the angel of Jehovah said unto her, Return to thy mistress, and submit thyself under her hands. And the angel of Jehovah said unto her, I will greatly multiply thy seed, that it shall not be numbered for multitude. And the angel of Jehovah said unto her, Behold, thou art with child, and shalt bear a son, and thou shalt call his name Ishmael, because Jehovah hath heard thy affliction. And he shall be as a wild ass among men. His hand shall be against every man, and every man's hand against him. And he shall dwell over against all his brethren. And she called the name of Jehovah that spake unto her, Thou art a God that seeth. For she said, Have I even here looked after him that seeth me? Wherefore the well was called Beer-lahai-roi. Behold, it was between Kadesh and Bered. And Hagar bare Abram a son, and Abram called the name of his son, whom Hagar bare, Ishmael. And Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bare Ishmael to Abram. So, what did Sarah do? You know, after she found out. Do what?
She didn't wait for God to take care of the problem.
Right. Here, you know, she told him to do that. She told Abram to go into the handmaiden, to Hagar, so that she would conceive. But then, when it happened, she got upset because Hagar, the way I see what it says here, she was despised. She looked down on Sarai because here she was married to Abram. She couldn't have kids. He comes in, lays with her. She gets pregnant. So she felt like she's on a higher plane than Sarai because she could bear children. And Sarah couldn't.
It looks like to me Abraham just kind of stayed out of it. He didn't really want to get involved with two women fighting.
Yeah.
Like he had nothing to do with it whatsoever.
He didn't. He was just obeying his wife.
Yeah.
Someone over here started to say something? She was jealous, yeah. Yeah, she didn't like it that, you know, like say, even though she told her to do it, she didn't like it that it happened. And so How'd she deal with Hagar? She didn't talk to her. She didn't say, well, that's good, you know, take it. Do what?
She did what a jealous woman would do, exactly.
Yeah,
That's Satan, you know, that's what she did, unfortunately.
Verse 6, there says Sarah treated her harshly.
yeah. Yep. So, what did Hagar end up doing? She left. It looks like she was afraid for her life because of the way Sarah was doing to her, dealing with her.
The Old Testament is our schoolmaster, and so I take it that we got to learn something for today. And so, looking at these folks and what they're doing, reminds me that God tells us that it's not within man to direct his path. So look at these people and the situations they were in, and whether Abram or Sarah, their actions may seem logical, but you can see the consequences. The consequences not only of them, but the world. Because Ishmael is described as a wild ass of a man. Now, at this time in history, we're not too familiar with wild asses, but I can tell you, they're still alive today and out there. And they're some of the meanest critters you'll ever meet. So it's interesting that God describes it with these words. Now, you realize that Ishmael, if I remember my history correctly, is the father of the Muslim peoples. And we see the conflicts today between the Muslims and the Jews and so forth, problems that the world deals with every day because of the conflicts between these peoples who are descendants of those folks we're reading about. So the consequences, because they followed their own reasoning, the consequences of that are still felt today, very strong. Now, interesting too, we see here a lack of faith, and you say, look at how small Sarah's faith was. She didn't believe she could conceive, though God promised that they would. And as you get further down, she's going to laugh about it.
Yeah, we'll get there in just a
We'll
minute.
get there. And now, so that speaks pretty strong to me of a lack of faith. Abram had a lack of faith because he said, she is my sister, and asked her to say that all the time. So, but you get over to Hebrews, and what do you find? Sarah, by faith, conceived. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So maybe there's hope for us anyway.
Well, you know,
Sorry, Bobby.
reading there in chapter 16, like I say, it talks about he will live against his brother. Who's his brother? Isaac. And so it was in a constant battle from that time forward between Ishmael and his people and Isaac and God's people. And it's going on today too.
Today, in Jerusalem, where Solomon's temple used to be, is a Muslim mosque. The Muslims are occupy it. They will not allow the Jews to go up there. The Jews badly want to gain that property back and tear that down, rebuild the temple. But anyway, the consequences are huge that we see today from all these events.
Yep.
We hope we learn something from that.
You hope, but I don't think we, the world hasn't anyway.
You know, you can almost feel sorry for Ishmael. He didn't ask for any of this, but he got it poured on him.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. When and why was Sarah's name, or her name changed from Sarai to Sarah? Sarai means contentious. Sarah means princess. So when and why was her name changed?
Well, God changed both their names at the same time. Abram to Abraham and Sarah to Sarah, and I think it's when she became pregnant.
Okay. Look in chapter 17, verses 15 to 17. And God said unto Abraham, As for Sarah thy wife, thou shalt not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. And I will bless her, and moreover I will give thee a son of her. Yea, I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations. Kings of people shall be out of her. Then Abraham fell on his face and laughed, and said in his heart, Shall a child be born unto him that is 100 years old? And shall Sarah that is 90 years old bear? So Abraham made a covenant with God. And because of that covenant, changed the names. From Abram to Abraham, and from Sarai to Sarah. Because of that covenant that God made with Abraham. That Sarah would bear a son and he'd be a leader of a nation. Why did the Lord rebuke Sarah when she found out?
Because she laughed and didn't believe that God could do that.
Right. Look at Genesis 18, 9 through 15. And if you read the first eight verses there, and he knows the angels are there talking to Abraham. And they said unto him, Where is Sarah thy wife? And he said, Behold, in the tent. And he said, I will certainly return unto thee when the season cometh around, and lo, Sarah thy wife shall have a son. And Sarah heard in the tent door which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old and well stricken in age. It had ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. And Sarah laughed within herself, saying, After I am waxed old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord being old also? And Jehovah said unto Abraham, Wherefore did Sarah laugh, saying, Shall I of a surety bear a child who am old? Is anything too hard for Jehovah? At the set time I will return unto thee when the season cometh around, and Sarah shall have a son. Then Sarah denied, saying, I laugh not, for she was afraid. And he said, Nay, but thou didst laugh. She didn't laugh out loud, but she laughed to herself. That
I think what we see here, or what I see there, is Abraham and Sarah both are guilty of what we're guilty of today. We try to limit what God can do. Even when God tells us what he's going to do, we still try to put him in a box and limit what he can do for us.
yeah. Yeah, that is quite evident.
But her problem was she lied about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. What
Over here, it says that Abraham laughed too, or basically, shall I do, an old man do this, or whatever. But he said it. She said she didn't say it.
yeah.
That's the difference there.
Yeah,
Me.
she laughed to herself, but then she denied that she laughed.
Right.
And like I say, she laughed to herself, but what was the question that was asked to Abraham? You know, they were standing outside that tent. Why did she laugh? Don't you know I can do anything I want to do? You know, that's what he was told. But like Keith was saying, you know, that's us today. God has told us he can do anything he wants to do. We just have faith to do it. And we kind of laugh. We can't do that. You know, it's too much work, costs too much. We just can't do that. We don't have time to do it. Let's get on with our lives doing other things. You know, that's what we, as a people, tend to do. And we don't trust in God to do what He says He's going to do.
You know, Paul, this really speaks to us today that God's mercy is extended to us. You know, when we see this so much in the Bible, how when we turn to God, He intervenes for us. When we realize it won't through prayer. And that's great to know that mercy is extended to us today. Yep.
It sure is. Otherwise, why would we be here this morning? You know. Who was her illustrious son? We all know that. Who was Sarah's son? It was Isaac. Look over at chapter 21, 1 through 5. And Jehovah visited Sarah as he had said. Jehovah did unto Sarah as he had spoken. And Sarah conceived and bare Abraham his son in his old age, at the set time of which God had spoken to him. And Abraham called the name of his son that was born unto him, whom Sarah bare to him, Isaac. And Abraham circumcised Isaac. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as God had commanded him. And Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born unto him. So Isaac was the son. What does Isaac's name mean? I think this is kind of humorous. What does Isaac mean? Laughter. Laughter. It's kind of funny, isn't it? Sarah laughed. Abraham laughed. So they have a son's name that means you laughed. So it's ironic there. How is Sarah used to teach a lesson? In Galatians. So turn over to Galatians chapter 4. Galatians chapter 4, 24 through 26. Which things contain an allegory? For these women are two covenants, one from Mount Sinai, bearing children unto bondage, which is Hagar. How this Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia, and answers to the Jerusalem that now is, for she is in bondage with her children. But the Jerusalem that is above is free, which is our mother. So, how is Sarah used to teach a lesson here? How did Sarah teach a lesson from what Galatians just said, what Paul said in Galatians?
Maybe to be free, you trust God.
Okay. If you look there, verse 26. But the Jerusalem that is above is free. Putting your trust and your faith in God. Being a Christian. We have the home in the Jerusalem above, which is heaven. So we are free. And Sarah was, taught that lesson by God blessing her with a child when she was old. Even though she laughed about it, she still bare this child. And Hagar's seed is in bondage. And today it's still pretty much, they're going against the church. The Muslims are fighting against Christianity. You know, back in, I'm going to call them the medieval times, you know, the Crusades and stuff that went on. Those were monstrous, bloody battles of Muslim against Christian. And so today, in some foreign countries, they still fight against Christianity. And they'll kill the people who come in to try to teach the gospel to the people because they're in bondage. How old was Sarah when she died? Back in Genesis, like I say, we're going back and forth here. Genesis chapter 23. Genesis 23, verse 1. Excuse me. And the life of Sarah was 127 years. These were the years of the life of Sarah. 127 years old when she died. Quite a long life. How did her passing affect Abraham? When Sarah died, how did that affect Abraham? When you have a loved one die, how does it affect you? Look at verse 2 there in 23. And Sarah died in, I can't pronounce that word, Kiriath Arba, the same as Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abraham came to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. Same thing happens today. When you lose a loved one, you go out and throw a big party and say, hallelujah, they're gone.
If Dolores does it, I'll need to discipline her.
Dolores said, I can cook anything I want to now. Yeah, we all mourn when we lose a loved one. And Abraham was no different. I mean, you know, they'd been married for how many years? And then she died. When you're with someone for a long period of time, you kind of get used to them. You know, you grow stronger together. Where was she buried?
The first family graveyard.
Do what?
First family graveyard that we have recorded.
Yeah.
He purchased that.
Yeah, look at in chapter 23, verses 17 through 20. You need to read the first part there of 23 down through there because it explains a lot of things. So the field of Ephron, which was in Machpelah, which was before Mamre, the field and the cave which was therein, and all the trees that were in the field, that were in all the border thereof around about, were made sure unto Abraham for a possession in the presence of the children of Heth, before all that went in at the gate of his city. And after this Abraham buried Sarah his wife in the cave of the field of Machpelah, before Mamre, the same as Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And in the field and the cave that is therein were made sure unto Abraham for a possession of a burying place by the children of Heth. Now, if you go back to the first part of 23, it gives you the going between Abraham and the children of Heth to purchase this land for him to bury Sarah in.
Paul, do we know much about the Hittites?
I don't. I know they were people in the land of Canaan
That he bought the plot from?
yeah. Yeah, it's, going down from verse 3, if you read down through there, it talks about his dealings with them to get that land to bury Sarah in. Okay,
Oh, let me ask a question. I picked up the wrong glasses this morning, so I can't read nothing this morning, but was Abraham and Ishmael the first ones to be circumcised?
Abraham was, yeah. I don't think Ishmael was. Isaac was. Okay. Yeah, because of the covenant that God made with Abraham. And God told him for his seed to be circumcised on the 8th day. And that was carried out with Ishmael and Isaac. So they would be the first to be circumcised. Okay, we've got 3 discussion questions here, which we'll read them and let y'all think about them, and if anybody has a comment. How did Sarah's faith compare with Abraham's faith? How did Sarah's faith compare with Abraham's faith? What do you think of Sarah's dealing with Hagar? And then what was Sarah's greatest contribution to the world?
Started the descendants of Christ.
Right. Yep. Yeah, Isaac became a great nation, and it's through them that Christ was born. So what do you think about Hagar, or Sarah's dealing with Hagar?
I think it backfired on her.
Yeah.
Backfired on her? Okay. Do we treat people that way today? We shouldn't.
With Hagar, she didn't really treat Sarah right.
Right. Yeah, it goes both ways.
It started with Hagar, because she was going to take off.
Yeah. But I mean, we still see that today though, don't we? I'm mad at you, so I'm not going to talk to you, or I'm going to spread rumors about you.
She also wasn't given a choice in the matter. This was not something that she chose. She was a servant who was given to the master as a wife.
Yeah. Yeah, she was. Okay. Was Sarah's faith a little bit weaker than Abraham? Or were they about the same?
Depends on what year you're talking about.
When she found out that she was going to conceive, and she laughed. Of course, Abraham laughed also, because he was old. He was well past the age.
She was too.
Huh?
She was old also.
Yeah, she was old also.
So I can see where she might laugh at it, the whole idea.
Okay. We're going to look at another good one next week. Read up about Lot and his wife. And bell's going to be ringing, so that will do it for this morning. Appreciate all the comments. And where's my...